When we talk about vectors, we got to discuss some terminology that we're going to be using. The first term that we are going to be used with vectors is what we call a concurrent vector force. And what this means basically is that it is a force that is a point that is acted on by multiple forces. So let's say I've got a point here and I've got a force 1 here and I've got a force 2 here, and then I have a force 3 here. So they all act on the same point, and that is what a concurrent vector forces are. The next term that we use when describing vectors is what we call coplanar. And what that means is that they act on the same plane, okay? So remember, when we talked about Cartesian coordinates, it's helpful to visualize this. You know, I've got my y-axis, I've got my x-axis here, okay? And then you're going to have to imagine this being 3D, okay? And we've got another axis here, okay? And that's axis z. So if I have a point here, okay, and I've got two forces acting on it, okay, say I've got a force here, okay, and I've got a force here, okay, we'll call this one force 1, and we got force 2. Now, if you only have two concurrent forces, they have to act also in the same plane. So two forces acting on the same point will also be coplanar. As you can see, it forms a plane here, okay? And that is the plane they act on. Now, you can have three forces, such as we did here, that are concurrent forces that are actually also coplanar, okay? So this example here, they're all acting in this plane, okay, because this doesn't have a z-axis. But if we look over here on this one, and let's say we add another force in this direction, and it is in the z direction, it is not coplanar. You know, it can be coplanar with force 1 and, you know, this being force 3. It can be coplanar on this side, but it is not coplanar with this force, okay? And that is the difference. We also have something what we call resultant vectors, okay? Resultant vectors are two or more forces that act on a point, okay, that can be reduced down to a resultant force. So let's say we have a point here, okay, and is acted on by two forces. One's in this direction, and say one is in this direction, okay? So this would be force 1, and this is force 2. The resultant force is as if you were to replace both these forces with one force that would represent it. So it would be somewhere in between here, and it would be the force resultant. It is acting as if that is the resultant force. So imagine if you had an example I could quickly do is, say you have a barge, okay, and this barge, say, is here. That's my barge, beautiful barge, right? And let's say I have a couple tugboats here, and they're pulling on the same point. They're pulling in this direction and this direction, okay? So you got a force 1 and you got a force 2. So what is the result of all this on the barge? Okay, it's not going into that direction along force 1 nor force 2. It's somewhere in between, okay? That is the result of these two, and that's what we call a force resultant. You can have multiple forces, more than two, and then boil it down and create one force that would represent the result of all those forces acting on that one point.